So I did two studies last in 2009 in Bristol Bay, and this is the report on the second study. I did the one study that looked at specific handling practices, and then I did a second study where I looked at the quality of fish from individual fishermen. And what I did was I identified about 15 fishing boats that stayed in Agagik through the majority of the season. When these boats came in, I tagged samples of their catch at the tender. I tried to go for 20 fish per delivery and sampled each boat 4 to 8 times through the season. You can see the tagging gun and the tag right there that I put on one of the fish. It was tag coded Z, so that was boat Z. And what happened was the tender would take the fish to the plant. The fish would get segregated out, and then they'd be run through the H&G line, and those H&G fish, when they came down the line, they would go down graded number 1, number 2, and number 3 on a line. The people who did the grading would just literally rip the tag off the fish and drop the tag into a coffee can or a plastic bag. At the end of the day, a project person would go and collect the tags and sort them all out and keep the information, write it down on a spreadsheet. And then we'd get back to the fishermen with report cards that would indicate their relative percentages of number 1s, number 2s, and number 3s, along with their standing among their peers in the fleet. So here's what the report card looked like. And you can see I've got 15 boats in this sample here. And the boats had averages. In 2008, I looked at quality fillets. And in 2009, I looked at the quality of head and gutted fish. In 2009, my high boat had 63% number 1s and my low boat had 33% number 1s. Interestingly enough, and I'll get to this, the low boat in 2008 was my high boat in 2009. In 2008, the fisherman, the 2008 low boat guy didn't like coming in last, and he made some changes in his operation in 2009, and he significantly boosted his quality score. So what does all this mean? These people get report cards, and okay, so they're different guys are producing different percentages of number 1s, 2s, and 3s. Well, how does this work how does this affect the actual industry that we're in? Well, what I did was I made some phone calls around to my friends in the industry, and I got some information about the average price of headed and gutted fish graded in number 1, number 2s, and number 3s. So then what I did was I took a look at if the processing plant sells 100,000 pounds of headed and gutted salmon, what's the average price that you're going to get for your 100,000 pounds given the product mix of 1, 2s, and 3s? And then I broke that down by boat. So what we're seeing here is the aggregated value of 1s, 2s, and 3s, and the blue bars represent the value of the fish that were delivered by the individual fishing boats, by the individual fishermen. So on the extreme left-hand side of this chart, we see that boat EE and boat I had virtually identical scores, and the value of their 100,000 pounds, first wholesale value, would have been about $267,000. Whereas way over on the right-hand side of the graph, we're looking at boat DD, and the value of his 100,000 pounds would have been about $240,000 based on his quality mix. Don't forget, he had about 33% number 1s. Boat EE and boat I had 60-some% number 1s. So that's the difference right there. The difference to the processing company was roughly $27,000 in value to them, broken down between boats EE and I and boat DD. And everybody else fell somewhere along that spectrum. Interestingly enough, as we all know, Bristol Bay is a very volume-driven fishery. So what I did here for my 2008 sample is I looked at the average value of the fish per boat per delivery, broken down in number 1s, number 2s, and number 3s. And then we charted these different boats on this chart right here. I had 12 boats fishing in Agagik in 2008. So what we're looking at here is the 12 boats and the daily value of their daily deliveries. And what we're seeing here is starting on the 23rd of June and ending on the 18th of July, we're looking at the average value per delivery of fillets that they sold to the cannery, or were processed in the cannery. What we're seeing basically is that the value goes up and up as we approach the peak. There were quality control people who were on the boats. They were requiring that the fishermen do a better job or good jobs on bleeding their fish and chilling their fish. They started out relatively low, but the volumes are also low, and then they started to get better and better as they approached the peak. But all of a sudden, when they hit the peak uniformly, you can see right there on the 1st of July, they hit some pretty good values, and then boom, on the 2nd, 3rd, 4th of July, the values of the catch dropped precipitously. And then over time, as the catch started to drop off, the values started to rebound. So I take this to mean that it's pretty obvious that volume and quality are linked. So what we're looking at here is we're looking at some pictures on some tenders. As volumes increased, quality decreased. We saw fishermen cramming more salmon into their brailers, more fish into their smaller boats. And of course the tendermen, who were also hit with the volume, they were treating the fish worse. And here's a case where the fish were being dumped in a dry checker. You can see here's the brailers coming off the fishing boat, and then they're just being plopped down on the fish in the dry checker. What you're looking at basically is more than 1,000 pounds of fish in those brailers just being dropped onto the fish that were already in the checker. And I can assure you that if you were there in that checker and someone dropped 1,000 pounds of fish on you, you wouldn't be a number one very much longer. So, it stands to reason that you just can't do that kind of stuff and maintain good quality. So my conclusions are, something that I really believe in is what we have in this industry, no matter if you're a fish farmer or a troller or a seiner, but it's particularly true in our gillnet fisheries. What I call the quality hour is really crucial. My researchers have indicated to me that the quality hour basically encompasses the 15 minutes before the fish dies, how it dies, and the 45 minutes after it's dead. If that fish dies, for example, is caught in the gillnet and the gillnet is drug across the muddy bottom, or the fish is double gilled in the gillnet, that 15 minutes of struggling in that gillnet can make a big difference. How it struggles and what happens to it during that period when it's caught and when it's dying, it makes a huge difference in the quality of the fish. Of course, then for the short period of time after it's dead, if it's pulled out of the water and handled well on the boat and immediately chilled, that's one thing. If it's on a long soak and then pulled out of the water and then kicked around on the deck and then goes down into a dry fish hold, that's going to result in a very, very different quality fish. One thing I can tell you is that it's impossible to recapture value when there is abuse on the fishing grounds. Once the value is lost, it's lost, and there's no way that it can be brought back. And I think that if I were the emperor of Bristol Bay and the emperor of the universe, what I would do is I would base compensation, fisherman compensation, on report cards. What I would do is I would send everybody home at the end of the fishing season with the grounds price, whatever that is. Let's say it's $1 a pound, just for grins. And then whenever the company is going to issue its retroactive bonus or postseason adjustment or profit sharing, call it what you will, that's when the quality report card comes into play, and the fisherman's postseason adjustment is dependent not only on how many pounds he sold to the company, but also on the quality mix of the pounds he sold to the company. And I think that if that's the case, the fisherman sees that postseason adjustment and he sees that he's being penalized for delivering poorer quality fish. I believe that many fishermen will look at that very seriously, and they will start making the changes necessary to recapture that lost money. And don't forget, really, we're only looking at about 50% or 60% number ones in our industry in Bristol Bay. We've got a long way to go. I mean, there's a huge gap between what we're producing and what the farm fish guys are producing, or even the seiners and the trollers. So we've got an enormous way to go before we can get to 100% quality or even to 86% quality. So I think it would be an excellent thing for the industry to start compensating on the percentage of number ones that the fisherman delivers. And finally, if you have any questions, you can send me an email. This is my email address, mkbuckley@alaska.com. And I want to thank you very much for listening to and watching this presentation.